Joyce Meyer's world is crumbling. First, her brother was found dead in an abandoned building. Then, her security guard murdered his wife and children. Now, she's lost her biggest platform after 20 years because of a sickening child abuse cover-up. The pastor who survived years of sexual assault by her father couldn't take it anymore. The devastating chain of events has left millions of fans wondering, is this the end for America's most beloved preacher? Joyce Meyer was just a little girl when her life took a dark turn. Her father had come back from World War II, but instead of bringing safety, he brought terror. He began sexually abusing her when she was very young, and it continued until the day she left home at 18. She once said he raped her over 200 times. But it wasn't just the physical pain. He twisted her mind too, telling her it was special, that it was because he loved her. He made her watch pornography and asked her how it made her feel. She had to lie and pretend she liked it, even though she hated it. Living under the same roof with him meant constant fear. His moods controlled everything. She never knew when he'd explode or what might set him off. Her mother knew, and that hurt even more. Joyce said it was harder to forgive her mother than her father. Her mother didn't protect her, didn't say anything, didn't stop it. She was too afraid of the consequences, too scared to deal with her husband. Joyce was left feeling abandoned, unsafe, with no place she could call a refuge. That kind of betrayal runs deep. It wasn't just the abuse, it was the silence, the pretending like nothing was wrong. Her mother later told her she just couldn't face the scandal, that nobody talked about sexual abuse back then, but that didn't make it easier to accept. Somehow, Joyce still managed to do well in school. She wore a mask every day, pretending to be a normal girl. She made up stories to explain why she couldn't go to parties or stay after school. She lived a double life, outwardly put together, but crumbling inside. She felt lonely and ashamed. Ashamed of herself, ashamed of her father, and afraid someone might find out. That loneliness stayed with her for a long time, even after she left home. But the way she learned to keep going despite the pain became something she later used to help others. She first heard about God when she was 9, and even though she believed, it didn't make her pain go away. She often asked why God didn't save her, why he didn't stop the abuse. For years, she struggled with the idea of a loving God who stayed silent during her worst moments. But she held on. Later in life, she would say something shocking, that she was actually glad it happened. Not because it was okay, but because she believed it made her stronger. It gave her the strength to help others. But that kind of peace didn't come quickly. It took years of healing, questioning and searching before she reached that point. At 18, she thought marriage would be her way out. She married a part-time car salesman right after high school, hoping it would free her from her father's grip. But it was another trap. Her new husband was controlling, manipulative, and unfaithful. She went from one nightmare to another. He even convinced her to steal from her job, payroll checks they used to fund a vacation. Years later, Joyce paid back the money with interest, but the shame of it stayed with her. Things got worse. When she was 5 months pregnant, he left her for another woman. Joyce was just 22, carrying a child, and alone. She had no choice but to move back in with her parents, the very place she'd tried to escape. That time was her lowest point. She battled depression, felt worthless, and even considered suicide. But something began to shift. She started turning back to faith, not the shallow kind she had as a child, but something deeper, more real. The marriage officially ended in 1966. She was 23 and broken. To numb the pain, she started drinking and hanging out in bars. She looked for comfort in the wrong places, drifting through short relationships with men she barely knew. She once said she felt empty, like she was trying to fill a hole that couldn't be filled. That phase only lasted about 6 months, but it was a sign of how lost she was. Joyce Meyer was just 23 when she met Dave Meyer in 1966. She was a young divorcee carrying the weight of a painful past, years of abuse from her father, and a broken first marriage. She was not looking for love, especially not at the merry-go-round bar in St. Louis, where she was trying to escape her reality. But that night, Dave walked in. He wasn't the bar-hopping type. In fact, he almost never went to places like that. Something just pulled him there. And when he saw Joyce, something clicked. She wasn't interested, not even a little, but Dave didn't give up. He called her 37 times before she finally agreed to go out with him. Their connection grew fast. In just under 9 months, they got married. But even then, when Dave said he loved her, Joyce couldn't say it back. She didn't know what love really felt like. Marriage didn't magically fix everything. Joyce brought a lot of anger with her, the kind that doesn't stay quiet. She once described herself as loaded for bear, always ready to explode. The smallest things would set her off. A sock on the floor could trigger an 8-hour shouting marathon. One time, she gave Dave the silent treatment for 39 straight days, only communicating through written notes. Another time, she threw a frozen chicken at him. It missed, but the dent in the wall stayed for years. Dave stayed calm through it all, even when Joyce kept track of 37 old arguments just to use them against him. Their marriage teetered on the edge more than once, but Dave refused to leave. His patience was unbelievable. Then came the moment everything started to shift. It was June 22nd, 1978. They had been married for 11 years. Joyce had just finished another 6-hour tirade. Dave looked at her and said, "I've tried everything to keep you happy, but it's obvious you're determined to be unhappy, so I'm going to enjoy my life anyway." Those words hit her hard, like a lightning bolt. For the first time, she really saw herself. She said it felt like scales fell from her eyes. She started going to counseling. That's when she found out she had 17 different personality disorders. Her therapist even told her that 99.7% of husbands would have walked away, but Dave hadn't. That moment marked the beginning of Joyce's change, and eventually the beginning of her ministry. Raising a family didn't make things easier. They had 4 children, David, Laura, Sandra, and Daniel. Each child came during a storm. David was born while Joyce was still fighting her inner battles. Laura arrived during a 26-day separation between her parents. Sandra was born while Joyce was dealing with severe postpartum depression that led to a 3-month stay in the hospital. And Daniel came when they were drowning in $37,000 of debt. Somehow, Dave held it all together. And the kids? They were all different. David had Joyce's fire. Laura was calm like Dave. Sandra was sensitive and thoughtful. Daniel was full of joy and energy. With so many clashing personalities, fights were constant. Over 1,200 of them in the first 15 years. But those struggles made them stronger and more united in ways they didn't see at the time. It all began in 1976, while Joyce Meyer was driving home from a simple hair appointment. Her life at the time was full of frustration and spiritual confusion. Sitting alone in her car, she cried out to God, begging for answers. "There must be something more," she said. And then something happened that would change her forever. She heard God answer her, clear as day. "Joyce, I have been teaching you patience." In that moment, she felt something she could only describe as being filled with liquid love, so powerful that it overwhelmed her. That night, while out at a bowling alley, she still felt the effects. It was as if God had cracked her open and poured love straight into her soul. That experience lit a fire inside her, one she couldn't ignore. Not long after, she started a small Bible study at work. Just a simple gathering with a few co-workers, but it didn't stay small for long. There was something different about the way she taught. She was raw, direct, and real. People came not just for scripture, they came for answers, for healing, for hope. Joyce believed this wasn't just her idea. She said God had called her directly. "You will go all over and teach my word." That little Bible study was just the beginning. Her journey didn't unfold in a straight line. In fact, it took a few rough turns. She left her Lutheran church because they didn't accept women teaching the Bible. She tried another church, but the pastor there was too threatened by her gifts. That church eventually closed down. Still, she didn't stop. In 1982, she found her way to Life Christian Church in St. Louis. It was a struggling congregation, barely holding on with just 30 members. But Joyce didn't see small numbers. She saw opportunity. Money was tight at the time. Joyce had quit her job because she felt God wanted her to focus full-time on studying Scripture. That decision made things tough at home. Still, she kept going. Life Christian Church gave her a place to grow, to teach, and to finally be accepted. The pastor there, Rick Shelton, saw something in her right away. He didn't care that she had no seminary training. What mattered was her passion and the way she connected with people. He asked her to fill in for him from time to time, and in 1980, he made it official. She became associate pastor. Her Bible studies exploded in size. What started with 150 people quickly grew to nearly 500 women attending 3 times a week. People weren't just listening, they were being transformed. She had found her voice. By 1983, Joyce felt called to go beyond the walls of the church. Pastor Shelton had introduced her to radio, and she loved it. So she took a big leap. She bought airtime on 6 Midwest stations and launched her own program, Life in the Word. It started out small. She recorded episodes using tapes from her church sermons. When she later went independent, she even recorded from her son's closet. But people were listening. Her honesty, her plain speech, her willingness to talk about pain. These things made her stand out. And then came the part of her story that many ministers would have kept hidden. Joyce began sharing her past, the abuse she had suffered as a child. She revealed how her father had sexually abused her from age 5 until she left home at 18. It was horrifying, deeply personal, and unlike anything people were hearing in churches. But she didn't hold back. She believed that if she had lived through it, others had too. And if God could heal her, He could heal them. That openness built trust. She wasn't pretending to have it all together. She was surviving, healing, and helping others do the same. In 1985, she left Life Christian Church to start her own ministry. She called it Life in the Word, the same name as her radio show. This wasn't just a spiritual move, it was strategic. She now had full control over her message and the freedom to speak plainly about abuse, hope, and healing. Her audience kept growing, especially women who saw in her someone who understood their pain. Television came next. In 1993, her husband Dave suggested she take the leap. She secured airtime on 2 key networks, WGN and BET. WGN reached people nationwide. BET helped her connect with Black audiences who hadn't always seen themselves reflected in mainstream Christian media. The broadcasts used live footage from her conferences, so people could feel the energy of her events right from their living rooms. As her TV ministry grew, she decided it was time for a new name. Life in the Word became Enjoying Everyday Life. It was more than a title change. It was a shift in message. Joyce wanted people to know that faith wasn't just for Sundays. It could shape their everyday moments, every joy, every struggle. And as her reach expanded, so did her message. She began to teach about prosperity, about how faith and generosity could lead to health, peace, and yes, even success. In 1998, her face appeared on the cover of Charisma magazine, a big moment in her career. They called her America's most popular woman minister. That recognition meant a lot, not just for her, but for every woman who had ever been told she couldn't preach, couldn't lead, couldn't teach. But what truly set Joyce apart was her style. She never claimed perfection. She told jokes on stage. She admitted when she was struggling. She told the truth about her past, about the abuse, about the anger she carried for years. Her 1995 book, Beauty for Ashes, laid it all out. How God had taken the ugliest parts of her life and turned them into something beautiful. It wasn't about sounding holy, it was about being real. In the late 1990s, Joyce Meyer's ministry wasn't just growing, it was exploding. What started as a small religious group had turned into a major organization. The proof? They moved into a brand new $20 million headquarters in Fenton, Missouri. This wasn't just an office, it was a statement. About 400 people worked there, and it served as the main hub for their 9 international offices. The building itself showed how far they'd come. It had luxurious touches, like a $30,000 green malachite table and a $23,000 antique commode. Some people criticized it, saying it looked more like a wealthy business than a church. But Joyce didn't slow down. The ministry kept growing, and it was just getting started. Then came the Dream Center. In 2000, Joyce and her husband Dave opened it in St. Louis. It wasn't just a church, it was a place where struggling people could get real help. They offered food, clothes, showers, and haircuts. They helped men recover from addiction. They supported kids with after-school programs. Everything was done with care and dignity. Clothes had to be clean and without holes. Food was hot and ready early each morning. For people like Deshalabine, it changed everything. She went from being homeless and addicted to having hope again. Under pastors like Jeff Allensworth and Tony Ayala, the Dream Center became more than a building. It became a place where lives were rebuilt. While that was happening at home, something big was happening overseas. Joyce's son, David Meyer, helped lead a new project called Hand of Hope. This was the ministry's way of helping people all over the world. It started small. Just 10% of their income went to missions. But it didn't stay that way. By 2023, they were feeding over 22 million people across 26 countries. They gave medical care to thousands. They rushed in after disasters to help people survive. Over time, they treated more than 375,000 patients. And along the way, over 129,000 people decided to follow Christ. They also built clinics, brought clean water to villages, and opened recovery homes for survivors of human trafficking in places like Thailand, Greece, Ukraine, and South Africa. The work just kept expanding. Long before all of this, back in 1995, Joyce had written a book that would change everything. It was called Battlefield of the Mind. The message was simple but powerful. Our thoughts matter, and we can take control of them. The book struck a chord. People everywhere connected with it. It sold over 7 million copies. Joyce later said it was the most important book she ever wrote. A new version, updated for a new generation, is set to come out in 2025. The book tackled real struggles, worry, fear, anger, depression, and offered hope through faith. It turned Joyce into more than a preacher. It made her a trusted voice for anyone fighting battles inside their mind. And that was just the beginning of her writing. Since then, she's written more than 150 books. Some are daily devotionals, others are about personal growth or Bible study. Her latest, Mornings with God, came out in September 2024. She even landed a $10 million deal with a major publisher. Her books have reached people all over the world, translated into over 160 languages. More than 39 million copies have been sold. Her next book, What About Me, will be number 151. Some of her books became bestsellers. Others earned high praise from readers. But all of them shared one message. You can change your life, and faith can help. In 2003, Joyce Meyer's name was everywhere, not just for her sermons, but because of a shocking news story. A newspaper in St. Louis had published a detailed investigation into her ministry. It wasn't about her preaching, though. It was about how she lived. The article described a $10 million jet, a $107,000 silver Mercedes for her husband, and a $2 million home for herself. On top of that, each of her 4 children had a house worth $500,000. The ministry's headquarters cost $20 million. And inside was over $5 million worth of fine furniture, artwork, and high-end equipment. All of it was paid for by donations from followers who believed they were supporting Christian work, not a luxurious lifestyle. The public reaction was immediate and intense. After the story came out, a Christian watchdog group called Wall Watchers asked the IRS to look into Meyer's spending. Things got even more serious in 2007 when Senator Chuck Grassley added Meyer's ministry to a list of 6 televangelists under investigation. His team wanted to know how ministries that were supposed to be nonprofit could afford things like a $30,000 round table made of malachite or a $23,000 antique chest. They asked about a $14,000 custom bookcase, expensive religious art, and even plastic surgery. They demanded receipts, explanations, and proof that donations were being used properly. In 2004, with criticism mounting, Meyer made a change. She said she would take a smaller salary from the ministry. Instead of $900,000 a year, she would earn less. But there was a catch. She would now keep most of the money from her book sales, which she had previously donated back to the ministry. That meant every time someone bought her books at a store or online, the profits went straight to her. Her team admitted this shift would likely increase her personal income, even though she was technically earning less from the ministry itself. By 2009, Meyer's ministry had taken steps to repair its image. It joined a financial accountability group created by Billy Graham to make sure Christian organizations followed strict rules. This group checked their finances, made sure there were outside board members, and demanded yearly audits. Joyce Meyer Ministries passed every test, unlike some others that refused to cooperate. They now published yearly reports and promised more transparency, which helped win back some public trust. As the years went by, Meyer began to change her message too. In 2019, she admitted something that surprised many people. She said that the way she used to preach about faith and money had gone too far. She used to believe that if someone got sick or had problems, it meant they didn't have enough faith. Now, she saw that wasn't true. She said clearly, there is nowhere in the Bible where we're promised we'll never have trouble. It was a rare moment of public reflection. Others like Benny Hinn had also stepped away from preaching that faith always led to wealth. But critics still pointed out that, despite this change in tone, Meyer continued living in great luxury. Then came a personal tragedy. In December 2010, Meyer received a call that would haunt her. Her brother David had been found dead in an abandoned building in Los Angeles. He had been there for about a month before anyone discovered the body. It was a painful moment. David had struggled with drugs for years, starting during his time in the Marines. At one point, he had even tried to recover through a church program, but eventually gave up and went back to the streets. Meyer spoke about his death at a conference, using it to show the difference between two paths, one of discipline and one of despair. It was a tough message delivered during what should have been a joyful season. A few days later, she received what was left of her brother's life, his ashes and a small bag of items, a broken watch, an empty wallet, a pocket knife, and a keychain. She brought them to the stage and held them up. Then she said, "My personal effects and his personal effects are sadly different." It was a dramatic way to ask people to think about their own lives, their choices, and how they'd be remembered. The broken watch, in particular, stood out to her. To Meyer, it meant David had run out of time. She continued sharing this story in her sermons. She said she believed David would have wanted her to use his life as a lesson for others. They had both come from the same broken home. They both had trauma. But one had found success, and the other had lost everything. She said she took responsibility for her pain, while David always ran from his. It became a key part of her message. No one, not a person or even the devil, can stop you from reaching your purpose if you make the right choices. Some people, however, felt uneasy with how she used her brother's death. To them, it seemed like she was using his downfall to highlight her success. Behind the scenes, though, Meyer may have felt differently. People close to her say she sometimes expressed guilt about David. While she lived in comfort, he died homeless. While she flew in private jets, he lived on the streets. She had tried to help him, but she may have wondered if she could have done more. It was especially hard because of the timing. Right after Christmas, when her ministry was usually sharing messages about family and gratitude, publicly, she told a story of choices and consequences. Privately, she may have been wrestling with a much harder truth, that life isn't always simple, that addiction and pain don't always follow neat paths, and that sometimes, even when we try, we can't save the people we love. In January 2025, something unexpected happened that shook the world of Christian television. Joyce Meyer, one of the most well-known televangelists, decided to stop airing her daily program, Enjoying Everyday Life, on the Daystar television network. This wasn't just any decision. It ended a relationship that had lasted almost 20 years. Her show had been a major part of Daystar since 2005 and reached millions of people around the world. What made her leave? The answer was tied to a serious and painful situation. In late 2024, a journalist named Julie Roys published an investigation. It revealed that Daystar's president, Joni Lamb, had allegedly covered up abuse involving her own 5-year-old granddaughter. The claims said that the abuse happened between 2020 and 2021 and involved a male family member who also worked at Daystar. The child's father, Jonathan Lamb, and his wife, Susie, said Joni knew about it, but kept it quiet. They also accused her of spiritual and financial wrongdoing. Police in Texas opened an investigation, but Daystar strongly denied everything. Joyce Meyer didn't stay silent. Her team made a bold move and pulled the show. Inside her ministry, the decision was deeply emotional. Dan Meyer, Joyce's son, and a leader in the ministry, wrote a message to staff explaining why they did it. He said that the allegations felt too close to home because Joyce herself had survived years of abuse as a child. Dan wrote, "We feel a profound responsibility to stand for truth and create space for its discovery." He also mentioned that many of their viewers were already reaching out, worried about the situation. For a ministry that usually keeps tight control over its message, this moment showed rare openness. Still, they didn't close the door completely. They said they might return to Daystar someday if the issue was properly resolved. Even so, walking away wasn't easy. The decision meant losing a huge broadcast platform and possibly millions of dollars. Airing a show daily on Daystar can cost a ministry up to $15,000 per episode. That adds up quickly over a year, but Joyce Meyer wasn't the only one leaving. Other big names in Christian broadcasting, like Jack Graham and Jesse Duplantis, also cut ties with Daystar. More followed. Some left because of the controversy. Others had already stepped away, saying they saw ethical problems in the network's leadership. Daystar tried to calm the storm, saying these changes were normal around contract renewal time. They said other programs were ready to fill the gaps, but the fact that they spoke about it publicly showed they were feeling the pressure. This wasn't the first time Joyce Meyer Ministries had been linked to controversy, though the past case was very different. Back in 2009, something truly horrifying happened. Christopher Coleman, who worked as Joyce Meyer's chief of security, was arrested for murdering his wife and 2 young sons. Their bodies were found in their home in Illinois. Coleman had staged the crime scene to look like someone angry at Joyce Meyer's ministry had done it. He even spray-painted threatening messages on the walls, but police soon discovered the truth. Coleman had been cheating on his wife with her best friend. He didn't want a divorce because it might have cost him his job, so instead he chose to kill his family. The investigation uncovered even more disturbing details. Months before the murders, Coleman had been sending fake threats to himself. He was trying to make it seem like someone was out to get him because of his job. He even placed a threatening letter in his own mailbox. A neighbor became so suspicious that he set up a camera to watch the mailbox. Sherry, Coleman's wife, had told friends that if something ever happened to her, her husband would be responsible. When Coleman went to trial in 2011, Joyce Meyer gave a recorded testimony. She said she didn't know about the affair and didn't suspect anything was wrong. On the 2nd anniversary of the murders, a jury found Coleman guilty of all 3 killings. He was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. Meyer said she was cooperating fully and had prayed for Coleman.